From the Grand Ballroom at Executive Caterers at Landerhaven, thank you for joining us as we celebrate more than 20 years of presenting important and timely discussions. Corporate Club is the direct link for community leaders to connect with regional businesses, government, and nonprofit organizations. This series of programs deals with those issues and persons that impact on the lives of those who live in Northeastern Ohio. Corporate Club at Landerhaven begins right now.
Thanks so much, Alex, and welcome to the Education Forum at beautiful Corporate Club at Landerhaven at Executive Caterers. We thank you all for being here with us this afternoon, and we have three of the best and the brightest sitting on this stage here today. It is such an honor and pleasure to have them here with us today. So I'd like to introduce to you our panel today of our college presidents. We have Scott Scarborough from the University of Akron, Beverly Warren from Kent State, and Alex Johnson of Tri-C. Again, welcome. I mentioned best and brightest, but they're also three of the newest members to the Akron-Cleveland area, so we thank you all for being here with us today. And let's talk about that. What attracted you to now come to a new place, bring your families, relocate, and what was so attractive about being here in this area?
Well, for me, I was at the University of Toledo for almost 7 years. It was actually my wife who came to me and said, University of Akron is looking for a new president. I've researched Akron on the web. It's beautiful. It's near Cleveland. You have to take a look at this job. So she's the one that steered me in the direction of applying for the position.
Then you heard LeBron James was coming back, and you went, okay, we'll move to Akron,
Absolutely.
right?
It's good enough for LeBron. It's good enough for me. So that's good.
His family was just at one of your games too, right?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we had the welcome home party for LeBron James, and 25,000 of our closest friends showed up at our football stadium. So it's been quite eventful in my first few months.
Right, you just started July 1st,
July
is that
1st.
Right? So we welcome you. And Beverly, you just started July 1st as well too, so welcome.
I did as well, thank you. For me, I had learned about Northeast Ohio long before I even was aware of the great opportunity that would be presented to me. I read a piece from the Brookings Institution that talked about the up-and-coming regions in the country. And Northeast Ohio was listed as one of those top regions. Areas around healthcare and commitment to human health and advanced manufacturing. And so I was intrigued because I'm not from Ohio, I've never been in Ohio. And so then when I learned about Kent State University, and if you've not been to Kent, Ohio in recent months, you must come and visit. That is a remaking of that city and a great city-university partnership that is really astounding. So those were the big draws for me. One, not knowing about the opportunity, and then learning more about Kent State, and it was just a natural fit.
We welcome you. Now, you have been here a year, so you have so much to tell these folks, right? A whole year.
Yeah. I'm the senior among the three of us seated on the stage
Well, you called yourself
today.
that. I did not.
But only in terms of time on job.
Right.
But first of all, I just wanted the audience to know that I worked at Cuyahoga Community College as president of the Metropolitan Campus from 1993 to 2004. So for me, it was returning to an institution where innovation is ongoing, to a community that I know very well, and being with my family. My children live in Cuyahoga County. I have 2 grandchildren, and it's a delight to be around them and to share time with them as they're growing up. But Cuyahoga Community College is a great institution. It's a vanguard community college. It's ranked highly among the 1,200 two-year institutions in the nation, and I'm proud and privileged to serve as president.
We welcome you all, and we're happy that you're here today. Talk for a moment about how the role of presidents of college has changed. And I think that's something that's so interesting. We had a wonderful hour together speaking, and they all know each other. Beverly, you've had the presidents of the college at your house for dinner, and so to see this association, collaboration, this fraternity, as you would, for the presidents of college, I think is so important that we're all on the same page. But how has the role changed? Do you want to start with that?
Certainly. The role has certainly changed. And I think the opportunity to promote the overall advancement of the community is now a particular responsibility that presidents have. So for us, it's about ensuring that students who come to us are first and foremost prepared and that they can complete their education in a timely manner. So degree completion, certificate completion is an important responsibility that we have. The other, I think, opportunity that we have as presidents is to ensure that the educational experience for our students not only remains accessible, but affordable. And that we do whatever we can to ensure that students' tuition and fees remain within their reach, and that we identify additional revenue streams in terms of scholarships and support that will help them even more. And then the last thing I would add is a greater commitment to connect with the community to ensure that people understand the value of the educational experience, its power, and what it can lead to in terms of their personal and professional well-being and their contributions to the community in terms of leadership.
Before we have you two speak, Alex, will you comment on earlier when we talked today how important it is for Tri-C schools that are community college work with other four-year universities? Because back years ago, many times students would spend time in a community college or junior college, and then they would find out that their credits wouldn't transfer, and they felt that it was time that wasn't well spent. But you all collaborate and work together, which is wonderful, and an extra incentive for students.
Right, and certainly Scott and Beverly understand that. We have a responsibility now to not only invest time and energy in our own institutions, but also in public education to ensure that individuals are prepared for the college experience. And then for me, it's not only about working with public education, but it's also ensuring that I work more closely with four-year institutions so our students can transfer seamlessly to places like Kent State and Akron. And as you indicated, that takes collaborative effort. No longer can we be isolated as presidents from what's happening in a more global way to in our communities, and that's very important indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beverly, you want to talk about again with the role of presidents and how it's changed?
In some ways, it has changed dramatically, but in other ways, it does have university presidents focused on the role and mission of a university. Kent State University is a major national public research university, so oftentimes presidents were selected as scholars first among equals. And that role still continues because you must understand the role of higher education and its transformative power. And that is an internal connection that is strong. I think what has shifted is that university presidents are now very much externally focused as well as internally focused, and it is a multitasking role. Someone said to have a great president, you need to have a construction manager, you need to have a banker, you need to have a CEO, corporate executive, and you need to have a lobbyist. And that would be the role then of a university president wrapped into one. And I think that's what makes the role so intriguing, is to be this prime communicator of the role and value of universities to transform lives and communities. And I think that communication and translation is one of the strongest and most important roles university presidents play.
You know, the role of the president continues to change because universities continue to change over time. I mean, when you think about it, when the first universities were created in this country, they were church affiliated, private. Their purpose was to prepare ministers for the church, or to take the sons, unfortunately not daughters at the time, of wealthy people to teach them how to be responsible leaders for their community, to handle their wealth with dignity and in the right way. So that's the beginning of the university. And then think about how universities have changed. I mean, beginning in about the late 19th century, we passed what was called the Morrill Act, and that was really the beginning of the public university movement. And then public universities began to grow widely, and then we had 2 world wars, and university researchers were called together to help the country win the war. In fact, one of the great stories about the University of Akron is when our researchers were called to help develop synthetic rubber for the war effort. And although the Manhattan Project gets a lot of attention, actually it was the research program to develop synthetic rubber that was actually more pragmatically important to the war than really even the Manhattan Project. So universities then became these comprehensive research institutions. And again, back in 1910, only 250,000 students attended college in this country. Today, that number is over 22 million. So the institutions have grown larger. They've grown in terms of their mission and scope. And as a result, as Beverly said, you end up with these institutions that are massive enterprises. University of Toledo is an $800 million a year operation. University of Akron is a $500 million operation. I don't even know what Ohio State is, but my guess is it's a $2 billion a year or greater operation. So the presidency has had to evolve as universities have evolved. And it's exactly what you said. You've got to be both this internal manager and leader and this external representative and fundraiser and public relations and government relations and panels and,
right.
and public relations. So it's a complex job. I mean, and you can't do it by yourself, which is the reason you have to have a great team of people around you.
Well, you certainly do. And by doing that and being those leaders and wearing all those different hats, there's so much that you're thinking about as you're essentially running a community, a town. How do you then think of the individual student, the student that chooses your college saying, I want to be prepared, and how do you prepare each child, each student, to be competitive in a global society? I mean, that's a huge task when you're wearing all these hats. Betty, you want to start?
Sure, I'll start. And what I think that institutions like Kent State University are able to provide is this large opportunity of a complex institution. We have 42,000 students at Kent State. We have over 250 majors. So one of the ways that we serve the community is to make sure that each student can find his or her way among those majors. The thing that we focus upon is how do you make a large university small? And you do that by engagement. You do that by making sure that there is strong advising so that students can make their way and navigate through a fairly complex academic program. Preparing for a global society is really essential as we think about the education of students today. Many of our students' first jobs may be in Paris or London or Italy. It may be in the Middle East. But even if the job is in Cleveland, this is a global society. So you just have to walk outside your door and know that you must be able to collaborate and understand and work with cultures and people who are different than you are. I think that's the value of a higher education, is that you have this environment where the student is able to experience a piece of the world in a very controlled setting, so that there are add-on experiences so that when the student graduates, they should have the amassing of experiences as well as credit hours. We tell our students that a college education isn't just counting the credits, 120 credits and you're out of here. It really is amassing experiences and thinking about how you're going to connect the dots. So we think about preparing job creators. That's very, very different than mechanistic ways of passing credit hours. So what we hope through that maturation process is a way of really developing the soft skills that are necessary in today's world, as well as the very mechanistic engineering, corporate kinds of skills and workforce needs that we have. So I think a university has that role to be that microcosm of the world.
Well, when things get crazy, what I tell my staff is get me with some students, because I need to be recentered. I need to remind myself what universities are really all about. And when that happens, I get energized and I'm ready for the rest of the job. But you'll hear a lot of universities talking about the need of being student-centered, because there are so many distractions in terms of all that we do. The research, the service, is a huge part of what we do, but in the end, it's really about preparing these students for the life that they dream of living. And the important part to remember, however, is we tend to think about the 18-year-old coming out of high school going to college. But that's only a part of the segment of the students we serve. I mean, we serve international students, we serve adult students in increasing numbers, we serve online students from all over the world. We have transfers from community colleges that are coming in who have started off and have done well and are now transferring. So the student population that we serve is very diverse, and what it's caused us to do is have to reorganize the university to serve these students who all have different needs in order to be able to succeed. But in the end, it's all about the students, and that's the fun part of the job.
Yeah, no doubt. Wear a lot of hats.
Yes, you've asked probably one of the most complicated situations that presidents are facing today. And it's all about redesigning the student experience to ensure that they are prepared to address whatever they confront, either personally or professionally. Students are not monoliths. You cannot treat them all the same. We enroll 60,000 students each year, and we have to work with them in most instances on an individual basis. So what we've done in concert with what other institutions are doing is simply redesigning the student experience. We have this process called One Door, Many Options for Success. And in some instances, it begins when the individual student is in high school and preparing for the college experience. We have an intentional front door. So all of them are engaged in mandatory programs, including orientation, convocation, what we call a student success seminar or first-year experience program. Their second year, they're involved in a sophomore experience, and then as they move forward, we make an effort to work with them to ensure that they meet the qualifications for graduation and they're prepared for the workforce, or they transfer seamlessly to a four-year institution. That responsibility comes to us as a result of a lot of things. We want to do a better job of graduating students so that we can increase our graduation rates and our graduation numbers to provide a vibrant workforce and retain students. Secondly, we want to ensure that we help in closing the skills gap that's so evident in our great community. For every job available now, out of every 10 individuals prepared for the workforce, only 5 have the skills necessary to take on these job opportunities. Next, we have a huge issue in our state in terms of degree completion. We're ranked number 38 out of the 50 states in degree completion. And on a national level, we're struggling to maintain our competitive edge internationally because we suffer from not having sufficient numbers of graduates. And we've got to do a better job individually to address completion and success. And we've got to engage in collaborative effort to ensure that this region and this nation remain competitive.
How do you do that? Because that's definitely a struggle. That's definitely something that you're faced with every day.
Yeah. You know, I'll start off and help you understand that community colleges have an open door. So for most students, access is not an issue. But when you accept students into your doors, you essentially engage in a contract with them. And your responsibility is to ensure that they get everything that they need to be successful. I think Beverly mentioned the word student-centered, and Scott kind of supported that in his presentation, his comments. We're called a learning-centered institution. And there are 3 factors that go into being learning-centered. Number 1, our expectation is that these gentlemen and men, same thing, that these men and women from Tri-C do the best jobs that they possibly can to ensure that students have robust experiences. But students have responsibility as well. Number 1, they have to take advantage of what they offer. They have to be engaged in the college and the community in terms of service. And then ultimately, we want them, when they graduate, to be enabled and empowered to make the appropriate decisions about their lives, whether they're personal or professional. So in addition to the mission-driven approach that we have at our institution, you have to be heartfelt about how you deliver services. And I can tell you that the people of Tri-C are that.
You know, one of the things that I think is so powerful, it sounds very simple, but the engaged student is the successful student. And so you have to be very intentional about that, and particularly with 42,000 students, how do you make sure every student is engaged? So one is opportunity. We also begin with a very intentional advising, and we just launched a campaign called the Got 15 Formula to Finish. And what that is translating into for students is if you register for 15 credits a semester, you amass 30 credits in a year, you'll graduate in 48 months. And so we call the freshman class the class of 2018. So I think it's reinforcing, because many times students don't understand the unintended consequences of decisions. And so we've tried to really heighten our advising, heighten our connections. We find that students who are connected in clubs or in organizations or with their major are much more successful and likely to be retained. Some of these efforts are translating into really record retention for Kent State University, and I'm so pleased to see that connection. And the other thing that I will say about Kent State University in the very short period of time I've been there, I'm conducting a presidential listening tour because I'm new to Ohio, new to Kent State. And I ask, what is special? What is the heart of Kent State? And invariably, the faculty will say, the students. And the students will say, the faculty. And I think when you have that connection, particularly at a major research university where faculty have many responsibilities, that strong connectedness makes a difference.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, what students really need is good advice, connectedness to the institution and to the people who can help them, and then resources, time and resources. And so we really think and talk about how do we give students those three things. And one of the things that I've seen nationwide that I think will begin to catch on across the country is something called success coaches. Okay? Now, success coaches in a lot of ways are like the academic advisor that we've had for years. But the big difference is that the academic advisor is there when you declare a major, or if you're undecided, perhaps provides some what we call level 1 advising to give you some career options. But it's very reactive in nature. Usually the student has to initiate in some way to say, I need to see my advisor. Okay? The success coach is more of a proactive. In fact, the term that's used, it's not very comfortable, it's called intrusive advising, where you're using data and metrics to identify students who are having a problem before they might even know they're having a problem. And that initiates a contact on behalf of the success coach to the student, whose job it is to try to connect that student to the many resources that the university has to help that student. We have counseling centers, we've got tutoring services, we've got all of these resources available to students, but they're no good unless the student finds their way to those resources. So that's the purpose of the success coach. And I first became aware of the program at Central Michigan University, had done it and done it well. We copied the program at the University of Toledo. We're probably going to copy the program at the University of Akron. No reason to invent the wheel. But in the end, you know, students need that good advice, that connectedness. Another thing the success coach is trying to do is connect them to a student group so that they feel like they're connected to peers and with good, healthy relationships that can help them through the difficult times. In the end, going to college and graduating from college is hard work. And so the student, we can provide all the resources proactively, reactively, but in the end, the student needs the time, the resources, and the word that's used is the grit to get through the tough times. And so it's a combination of the two, the student working with the university working with the student, and if all goes well, we have a graduate.
Right. One thing that I would add, because I do think it's so important, and something that I think we're going to see more and more, and as Scott has talked about the history of higher education, we have seen internships and co-op opportunities sort of come and go in terms of their emphasis. I actually think student success is often linked to the fact that a student can see the end game. And the way to see the end game is to be connected early and often to the workforce. And so I didn't want to lose the opportunity as I look out in the audience that there are just many, many ways that businesses and universities can work together for student success. Because if they have internship opportunities and if they have co-op opportunities, it reduces cost of education. It helps them to keep their eye on the end game. And oftentimes it leads to that first employment opportunity. So I didn't want to lose the opportunity to say that I think public-private partnerships are going to be so important for our students of the future.
Keep your eyes on the prize, right?
Yeah.
But it seems like some students just have so much fun at your school that they don't ever want to leave, right? So we talked about over the last 20 minutes, the course of the last 20 minutes, the activities, the resources, and everything else that you mentioned. And all of that, of course, takes a lot of money. Let's talk about the rising cost of tuition. I know all of us could sit here, up here, out here, and say, schools were not this expensive when we were in school. And how did it go from here to here? Why are these costs of tuition going up so high? Do you want to start, Alex?
Well, I'll take a stab at that.
Give you the tough one. Sorry, we have to talk about it, right?
Well, you know, we laud the fact at Cuyahoga Community College that our tuition is very affordable. In fact, students pay approximately 30% of what it costs to educate them, and at community colleges nationally, that average is somewhere between 55 and 60%. We're fortunate at my institution that when it was founded 51 years ago, the citizens of Cuyahoga County enacted a levy to, first of all, build it and then to operate it. And then in 1991, we instituted another levy. So that has been a great source of revenue for us, but I think it is also a source of pride for those individuals that vote in favor of our institution when they get an opportunity to do that. We also get support from the state, about 30%. The county is in reference, this about 40%, and then of course student tuition is about 30%. But because we've had significant cutbacks at the state level, and of course the real estate devaluation at the county level, our budget has been reduced over the last 5 years by about $65 million. But we still make an effort to keep the experience of students affordable at about 30%. So we've enacted scholarship programs, particularly gap scholarship programs for students who need just a little bit of money to get them over the hump. And we have a tuition guarantee program whereby students actually sign a contract where their tuition will remain the same for a 2 or 3 year time period when they earn a 3.0 grade point average and amass the number of credits that would get them out of the institution in a timely manner. We've also instituted measures to promote student success. Every one of our students has free transportation, unfettered transportation on RTA. They use the UPass program, and they can travel back and forth to the institution or wherever they need to go to promote their overall well-being. So we made an effort to keep the tuition affordable, but I can attest to you that in some instances, the cost of education has gotten out of the reach of a lot of students within our nation, but I believe overall that presidents are taking a responsibility to keep it, to maintain it at an affordable rate.
So the easy answer is to look at, and when we were going to college, state support was at about 60%, tuition was at about 30% or lower of the cost of a college education. That has flipped in today's current market. So I think we can define why the cost of education is rising. I think what we have to now focus upon is how do we focus on affordability. So oftentimes public universities are now looking very much like a private institution in terms of its funding. And at a time when many universities haven't had the time to build endowment. So at a private institution, when there's less funding from public sources, there is an endowment that has been built up. And then you defray the cost of education. So you see a sticker price, but rarely does one pay the sticker price of a private institution, there's always cost reductions. I think public universities are going to be moving in that direction by how do we make college more affordable. We still want a quality education, and I think that's where we're grounded, is that what does it cost for really quality education with the change in resources for institutions, then how do we focus on affordability? And I have some ideas about that you're probably going to ask, but it's a partnership of students and families, federal and state resources, and universities really looking at their costs and how they help students defray expenses. So we're caught in a really, really important time in higher education where we've seen the shift, and now there is a hue and cry to do something about that shift in terms of making sure that a college education isn't out of the reach.
So yeah, when you talk about the rising cost of higher education, I think there's two things to keep in mind. One, it's what Beverly said. Back in 1987, public universities across the country received about $10,000 per student from the state to subsidize the cost of higher education for all of its students. That's 1987. Nationwide, the average is now $6,500. So from 87 till now, 10,000 to 6,500 in terms of the amount of money we got for each student from the state. So what have we done now? We've tried to cut costs, but on the other hand, we haven't been able to bring it down to that level to maintain the kind of quality programs we think students need. So we have increased tuition costs. Now here's the second thing to understand though. There's the sticker cost, the sticker price, and then there is what each student pays. So the sticker price has gone up dramatically, but very few students, the minority of students, actually pay the full sticker price. Most students are paying a far lower price. Why is that? Because of scholarships, because of financial aid, grants, because of outright discounts. Most universities today discount tuition down to a student's, quote, ability to pay. And then when that amount is hit, the student either pays the bill or they then borrow. And the federal guaranteed debt programs are available to all students. So access is not the problem. The thing to keep in mind when you hear this at a dinner conversation is to say, yeah, it's gone up, but not every student pays that amount, and the best thing that you can do is have your student talk to a financial aid counselor. That will determine the real price that a student pays, and universities bend over backwards to make sure that a student can get in the door.
I just wanted to add also that even though we all have these different revenue streams that emanate primarily from tuition and government sources, I think many of us understand the value of engaging in entrepreneurial kind of enterprises. So for us, our workforce development division is one of those where we actually sell programs and services to business. We also have the corporate college, which many of you have heard about. That's another way of producing revenue. We've extended our programs and services in the community through our hospitality management program. So many of you have been to our Pura Vida restaurant and hospitality management center right there on Public Square. So there are ways that we've identified and other presidents have identified through research, for example, to bring in additional revenue to subsidize those that have been, for lack of a better term, historic in nature.
There are definitely resources out there, and I'm sure as parents out here, you're always telling your kids, study hard, get on, play different athletics, and get into band, do things so then that could perhaps be scholarships in the run, because it's a big burden for parents and for students, especially for students to graduate with an insurmountable debt. We only have a few more minutes before we're going to take a break and get to your questions, but before we do that, if we can just touch on the importance of athletics in college, but also too in school. Talk about this movement of what your thoughts are on maybe perhaps paying student athletes, what you guys think of that, what are your thoughts? Because they are for big parts of your school, especially the two of you.
Yeah, I'll start. That's, I'm trying to think of what the 1 minute answer to that
Yeah, you only have 30 seconds now,
so
no.
30 seconds. So here's what I would say. You know, athletics is a part of our academic mission. It's a part of our service mission. These are student athletes. This is part of their educational experience. Think of all the things that you and I and others have learned by participation in team sports and all the leadership qualities. And so it's a part of their educational experience. But secondly, it's part of the service mission. It is something that universities have done since the beginning of time to give a community something to rally around. And we get excited about it, and donors step forward and throw a lot of money at it, and they've grown to major enterprises. The question is, what's the proper balance relative to our academic research and service mission? That's what we all struggle with. That's what all boards struggle with. And each institution has to make that decision for themselves.
That's good. That was perfect.
When I look at athletics, I might also look at honors college opportunities. So when you're looking at opportunities for students to achieve excellence in wherever their talents might rise, I think athletics gives students that opportunity. I also think it serves the institution. When you have a community and you build community, then participating in community engaged events like athletics is really big team building, big morale builders. When I visited with students in January, before I even took office, the students were saying, we really want to build morale. We really want to build the opportunities for students to excel on the sporting fields and courts as well as in the academic classroom. That being said, I think the real focus now, and one where we must keep our eye on the prize, is the student athlete. And the word student comes first in that phrase. And so my hope is that as we look at Division I athletics, that we really don't get that out of focus, and that students are here to learn first and compete secondly, and that combining that really prepares them for a world like no other opportunity. When you think of the number of Rhodes Scholars who were, very prized student athletes, it is that opportunity to develop leadership skills, and I highly value it. I just hope we keep it in perspective.
Sure. Great answer. Alex, I'm going to get your answer on the other side of the break.
No need to.
So you have a few minutes to think about it. We're going to take your questions, too, when we come back. So there's much more for our education forum here at Corporate Club at the Executive Caterers of Landerhaven. And we welcome you back to the Education Forum at Corporate Club here at beautiful Executive Caterers at Landerhaven. We have a fantastic panel of our local presidents here. We have Scott Scarborough from the University of Akron. We have Beverly Warren from Kent State and Alex Johnson of Tri-C. And we were talking about athletics and the importance of athletics in college and university life. And of course, we did not have enough time at the other side of the break. If you would like to comment on that, Alex, we would love to hear.
Well, just very briefly, my response, quite honestly, would be similar to that posed by Dr. Warren. And athletics is just another means by which we get students engaged in a college experience. We do it through our student leadership programs, we do it through our honors programs, and so forth and so on. Engagement for us also means that students complete different levels of attainment toward their degrees. So we celebrate those students that complete 15 credit hours, 30, and then ultimately 60, which of course is the number that you need to earn an associate degree at our institution. So athletics is just one of those ways that we get our students involved.
Sure, great. And the incentive is wonderful too that all of you have shown us today. We do have some great questions from our audience, and we're going to start over here. Go ahead.
Well, first, thank you so much for being here to speak with us today. I know we're all very appreciative of your time. My name is Dana Ness. I'm with Ohio Guidestone and Stepstone Academy, which is actually a high-performing charter school in the central neighborhood of Cleveland. So like you, I'm very passionate about education and believe that it is a major component to the economic development of Cleveland, Ohio, and the greater Northeast Ohio as well. I'd like to circle back, though, to the rising cost of education. And I think all three of you really did a fine job of discussing, why the cost of education maybe appears to be higher than the cost it was years ago. But I know I had the opportunity to be educated by two of what I believe are the finest institutions in Northeast Ohio, John Carroll University and Cleveland Marshall College of Law. And I had fantastic experiences at both. And what I heard you say was that, we do provide students counseling and the opportunities to come in and understand there's the sticker price to the cost of education. However, there are opportunities for discounts and scholarships. And I know you have, foundations that give money for these opportunities. But then also, we do have this real problem of students who are loaded with this insurmountable debt. And I'm wondering, because I'll bite the fact that I had these great opportunities at these great institutions, I really didn't have a counselor or one that was made known to really take me through the process of what it meant to not just achieve the end goal, but to then pay for it. And so when I graduated on the 24th of every month, I said, oh, I had this great education and now I'm really paying for it. And I believe that in order to really achieve that next step in economic development here in Cleveland, that we need people out there that are robust in the workforce and with opportunities to go out and be successful and achieve, but also to really educate them on what it means to pay for their education and to do it responsibly. The question then, how do you see your institutions as enabling students to not just find ways to subsidize their education, but to then become responsible for it and to be able to be effective in the payment of that education once they graduate?
Yeah, I'll begin. I mean, what's important to remember is that about 60% of students take out student debt. That's a lot of students. For the student who graduates from a public university, the average amount of student debt is $23,000. Okay? For the student who graduates, that's the entire time a total of $23,000. Now, I would argue that is not insurmountable. That's the cost of probably a pretty good used car, okay? And the return on investment on that $25,000 is immense. With a bachelor's degree, on average, you're going to earn $25,000 more per year than you would with just a high school degree. With a master's degree, $50,000. With a professional or doctorate degree, anywhere from $60,000 to $90,000 more per year. So $60,000 more per year, or even starting with $25,000, that's a one-year payback period on $23,000 of debt. Now that's the average. That means some are taking out more, some are taking out less. And the ones that we read about in the newspaper are the ones who've made some questionable choices and end up with a lot more. Those are the ones you read about in the newspaper. That's the one where they've gone to X private college, they've taken out $80,000 of debt and they've decided to be a school teacher, okay? Well, that's a very different kind of economic scenario. So I think we get all the way back to students needing some good advice and making good decisions. And whether it's a success coach or an advisor, that person needs to have a real conversation with the student about what do you want to be when you grow up? Okay, given this is what you want to be, here are some of your educational options that make sense financially for you. And if those conversations are good decisions get made, and on average, public higher education is still a wonderful investment.
I'd like to talk a bit about a three-way partnership that I see looking at the total cost of education. So it's not simply looking at the cost for 1 year and being able to afford that for 1 year. If we look at how we might, as universities, help students matriculate through the environment on target for graduating in 4 years or less. So the post-secondary enrollment opportunity is tremendous. Students can come in with 2 years of college credit and then only have to afford 2 additional years for a baccalaureate degree. So I think universities are trying to look at cost containment by looking at many, many options to reduce time to degree. We're telling our students that the difference between graduating in 6 years, which is the national average that we use, and graduating in 4 years is almost $40,000 over time. So when you think about the student loans you take out, if you look at it over time, trying to have the opportunities to educate students, what students and families can do is really work at the financial literacy piece of the equation. And I think we can help in terms of higher education. How do we make sure that students and families understand the cost of education, the cost of 4 years versus 6 years, the cost of doing post-secondary, reducing that cost? How do we help students understand that taking out loans is not free and that you're going to have to pay that back? And there are so many options. One of the things we're trying to do at Kent State is post a website that has all of the scholarship opportunities, not just simply Kent State specific, but there are so many federal opportunities to defray the cost of education. So making students aware is a tremendous boost. And then I hope that government can partner in terms of more Pell Grant opportunities for students with the highest need, low interest rate loans so that you are able to pay it back without the huge burden of the interest cost. So I see it as a three-way partnership. Many, many times it's what, you look at institutions, what can you do to lower your costs? And I think that's a valid question, but I think the partnership is important.
Quite honestly, anything I might add would be redundant because I think that Dr. Scarborough and Dr. Warren really covered the waterfront when it comes to ensuring that students understand how to maintain affordability in their higher education costs. So I would only summarize. Number one, the selection of a college is a personal and family decision. And I think included in that is not only the type of educational experience, the major, for example, but also the cost. And oftentimes, even though a student may be able to go to an Ivy League institution, they may not have the Ivy League funds in order to complete that education. The other thing that I would reinforce is the fact there are opportunities for students to earn college credit before they even go on to a two-year institution or a four-year institution through a very, very lucrative post-secondary enrollment options program now called College Credit Plus. High school students that qualify would only have to pay now $40 per credit hour at any state-supported institution. And I think families need to take advantage of that. I would be remiss if I didn't promote community college education as an affordable alternative for students to begin their education and then ultimately go to one of our fine four-year institutions and have a reduced cost over time as they complete their educational experience. And I do believe that the choice of a major is very important indeed, particularly if you are compelled to borrow money. Please understand that you have to pay that money back. And the choice of major leads to the type of job that you're going to get. And unfortunately, many of our 2- and 4-year graduates take jobs that don't provide them with ample resources to repay those loans. So the first thing is select an affordable alternative in concert with your family and your counselor. Do not borrow money if you don't have to. And make sure that you apply for any scholarship support that might be available to you, both from private sources and government sources.
You know what, and I don't want to belabor the issue, but you asked the big question. The other thing that we're seeing, I'm going to say particularly in Ohio, is this sense of collaboration across institutions. And I think we're going to see more and more of that so that there is a seamless matriculation from the community college without loss of credits. We've all heard the horror stories of taking 60 credits, but only 20 of them transfers. So that's really something we're addressing. I think University of Akron, Kent State University, what are we, 20 miles apart, that we already have dual enrollment programs. And so I think the opportunity for collaboration is really rich in Northeast Ohio.
Thank you, and good question. We have time, I think, for one quick question, and we're under 5 minutes, so we'll try and get through this. Okay.
Yes, hi. Dr. Warren, this is a question for you. You mentioned preparing your students in a global environment. You talked about soft skills first. Can you identify what those soft skills are?
Yes, the soft skills are those skills. I think about Daniel Pink's book, A Whole New Mind, and his premise is that the world is changing to a conceptual age, from a knowledge economy to a conceptual economy, and those soft skills would be those students who can communicate, collaborate, think critically, and are creative. And so the soft skills that I find that employers are looking for even more than the hard skills, because they'll say we can train for the job the student is coming into. What we need is a student who's ready to think on his or her own feet, who is able to be creative, who's able to be proactive, who doesn't have to be told what to do, who knows how to get earbuds out of his or her ears and listen and communicate. And those are the soft skills that I think we're seeing driving the world in a world of design, creativity, and entrepreneurship.
I said at the very top of this hour that we have some of Northeast Ohio's best and brightest, and you can certainly understand why. If we could have a round of applause for our extraordinary panel today. Thank you very much. And I think in closing, so many times as students and as parents, we are all guilty of thinking that something great is so far away. But what I ask you to do, and what I'm certainly reconsidering, look at the extraordinary schools that we have right here in our own backyard, that we are blessed to have them. So encourage your child, and if there are students out there, take a look at these fine schools that we have here. I know already Dr. Scarborough mentioned that I could be a dorm mother when my son goes to school, so it's a done deal. It's sealed and ready to go. So once you mention that to a mom who will never be able to let her children go to school, now I'm all ears for that. You guys have that too?
I think they call them residence hall directors.
Residence hall directors, fine. I could direct.
That we have. I thought, Scott, you were on to something.
But dorm mom sounds even better. Okay, we've got another 5 or 10 minutes, so we'll do a few more questions. Okay, we have a question back here. Why don't we start there? I think that's fine. Sure.
Good afternoon. I'm Kathy Spees from the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, JFK Eagle Academy. Thank you so much for allowing us to be here, Junior Achievement. It's a true honor. And my question is, as educators, how do we address the college placement scores that are declining? Thank you.
Who wants to take that? Okay, come on.
Okay, I'll give it an effort. I think we all are working through what I would see as a cradle-to-career partnership. There are many communities, and Summit County is one. Cleveland also has a semblance of a cradle-to-career partnership. So part of it is that really true learning and placement scores start in preschool. And the opportunity for communities to partner together to make sure that no child drops through the gaps that we often see in the pipeline of education. Third grade reading, so very important, leads to middle school success. Many dropouts begin thinking about non-progress as 6th and 7th graders, and then moving through then to the placement scores. I'm a former dean of education, so I'm going to have to also say that I hope that the educational environment doesn't become an environment of teaching to a test, but teaching for understanding. And I think if we can do that, and if we can prepare the future teachers that are going to be educating the children and leaders of tomorrow, that it is more important to understand than to perform on the test. There are ways to extend the school day and provide opportunities. So I think it is this thing that I keep calling a partnership, and making sure that we're teaching for understanding.
I'd like to just take a stab at it, because this is a place where presidential leadership really has a great opportunity. But before I do, I just want to comment that in Ohio, the Ohio Board of Regents is now instituting a measure called free remediation standards, which means that in addition to SAT or ACT scores, there are other measures that would qualify students to enter right into institutions and also to college level coursework. So there's an opportunity at the state level that has been given us to ensure that students are prepared in a lot of different ways for our institutions. But I talked about presidential leadership. This is a golden opportunity because we cannot wait until students get to us to be concerned about their college boards and their placement scores. So with respect to, once again, Dr. Warren, and I agree with her 100%, I have an opportunity as an ex officio of the Cleveland Metropolitan School District to work with them on the implementation of the Cleveland Plan and the Transformational Alliance. How many of you have heard those terms before? So Dr. Ron Berkman and I are working directly with Eric Gordon and with the mayor to identify those salient characteristics of student success that really indicate that there is movement in the district. And we've identified exactly what Dr. Warren talked about: preschool education, the ability to read by the time you're in the 3rd grade, movement toward graduation, thus reducing attrition, and then finally preparation for college as exemplified by ACT scores, SAT scores, and GPA. So it's important that college presidents take the responsibility to reach out to their communities and help identify and prepare those students early on that will eventually enter our doors.
Yeah, I think what I would add is that, it's important to remember those tests are recalibrated from time to time. An SAT score, when I took it, is very different than an SAT score today. That would be the point. But more importantly, I think it's important to realize that colleges and universities don't simply look at a score to decide whether or not to admit a student. There are a lot of qualitative factors, and as we become even more and more aware of the weaknesses of certain standardized tests, the importance of qualitative criteria becomes bigger and bigger. And then lastly, to point out that all of our colleges of education, a lot of the research that they do as scholars is directed at what can be done to improve the pre-K through 12 system. And just as a father of a still, a young student, when I came to Akron, we were given the list of 6 elementary schools to look at. We visited all 6. And what was amazing to me is how many different ways you can teach a first grader. The different ways that each of these schools approach their education. One school said, well, you really shouldn't even emphasize reading until the 1st grade. Another one says, oh no, we started in kindergarten. Another one was very much based on a German model. Another one was very much based on a Montessori model. So we're all trying to find, the real thing is, are you maximizing the learning potential of the individual child, the strengths and weaknesses of an individual child? And, that's what our good teachers try to do every day. And in the end, we didn't turn out so bad. I'm a product of a public school that wasn't as good as any of the 6 that we looked at in the Akron area. So, maybe I'm a kind of a cup half full guy, but I think things are getting better. We care about our children still. It's a complex age, but our institutions are evolving to give our kids the best chance to be successful in the life that they want for themselves.
I think that says so much too, even reflective of what we're talking about too. When you visited those 6 schools, very unique and very different, and that's what all our schools up here, although your ideas and thought process on so many things are very similar, each school offers something so different, which is so attractive to our students out there. Okay, we are going to go to Charles right now. We may have one more question. Is that right? Do we want to get to that? Okay, we have another student. We can't hear your microphone. We want to get some more questions in, if it's all right. And we understand if many of you have to get back to work, we understand if you have to do so.
Hello, my name is Michael Vincent, and I am a student at Cleveland School of Architecture and Design. My question is for all 4 of you, what is the best advice that you have ever received?
Best advice you've ever received?
Yes.
Okay, Alex, you want to start?
The best advice I've ever received. That would probably come from my wife. And she always tells me to be myself. And I think as presidents, not only do we need to exemplify and extol our technical skills, but I think there's some value in getting to know individuals on a personal basis. For our institutions, as large as they are, that's fairly difficult, but a president, quite honestly, needs to do that. And in terms of advice, that's probably the best I've ever gotten, to be quite honest with you.
A mentor of mine said long ago, take your work seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. And I try to live by that.
So I've gotten a lot of good advice, but maybe the one that comes to mind at the moment was a mentor of mine who was college president, university chancellor. He always said to me, see, look, you know, he says, I try to be right 7 out of 10 times, okay? 7 out of 10, I thought, well, that's not too bad. When I'm wrong, I don't let my ego get in the way. I turn on a dime. I try not to make the same mistake twice, but I never hold myself to a perfect standard, because those who don't make errors aren't striving for enough. So don't be afraid. You know, making errors, making mistakes is part of the learning process. It's what you do when that moment occurs that's really going to define you as a human being. So I've always remembered that, and as we begin college presidencies, I'm going to remind everyone around us of that as well.
That's right. That's right. Great advice for not just students, but for everyone. Do we have another question,
No,
Charles?
I think we're wrapping it up.
Okay.
I think, but this is quite a subject, and we could be here for hours. There's so much to cover in this, and there's so many areas we haven't. So we'll have to try and do this again sometime. But thank you so much for the extra time. Thank you so much for what you've brought to the program, and it's obvious that the state of higher education in Northeast Ohio is in good hands. So thank you very much.
Say so. Thank you. Thanks to all of you for coming out this afternoon too, and have a good day.